I will prove that nuclear energy is safe and the only viable alternative to coal-fired power plants. On the safety contention. 1. According to Science magazine, quote, the reactors being built or planned today are quite different and much safer than those that are still smoldering in Japan, end quote. Tony Rulstone, a nuclear engineer at the University of Cambridge, says that relative to the Fukushima reactor, new reactors, quote, have the benefit of 50 years of design evolution and operational practice, end quote. The fundamental problem at Fukushima is that the reactor safety systems rely on power in order to function. The first step in an emergency shutdown is to push neutron-absorbing control rods into the reactor to stop the fission reaction. In modern reactors, the rods are held above the core with electromagnets so that in case of all backup power systems fail, the rods will automatically be dropped and stop the reaction. The second step is to cool the reactor down. At Fukushima, the cooling system needs power in order to function again. Modern reactors use only gravity, convection, and heat from the reactor to pump cooling water in. This makes the reactor self-limiting and a meltdown virtually impossible. 2. Also, according to Science magazine, older reactors like Fukushima store spent fuel in elevated pools above the reactor, whereas modern reactors move spent fuel into a separate earthquake-proof building. 3. Fukushima should be seen as a success of nuclear energy. This was the worst-case scenario, and yet not a single person died and the public was not exposed to dangerous levels of radiation. 4. The way to make nuclear power plants safer is to increase our commitment to nuclear energy and invest further in developing new safety systems and retrofitting old ones. On the terrorism contention. 1. Stealing nuclear material would be virtually impossible. According to a report by the Brookings Institute, quote, since September 11th, these sites have been placed on highest security. Precautions at some nuclear weapons facilities abroad are almost certainly weaker than here, end quote. Similarly, the Nuclear Security Administration states that nuclear sites are, quote, one of the last places a terrorist would think about attacking and having hopes of success. The security basically bristles, end quote. 2. Even if they stole material, they couldn't make a bomb. Brookings argues that, quote, starting a chain reaction is not simple. Highly enriched uranium would have to be correctly contained to obtain an explosion, end quote. On the climate contention. 1. She says that nuclear power creates tons of waste, but as stated above, new reactors have safer storage mechanisms that don't endanger the environment. 2. According to the Center for Nuclear Engineering at Imperial College London, in an article in Science magazine, technologies being built today will be able to use thorium and plutonium in addition to uranium, and will be able to reprocess spent fuel. These technologies will provide reliable energy for over 1,000 years. Only by maintaining a commitment to nuclear energy can we guarantee that these technologies are deployed. 3. There is no reason to believe that decreasing a commitment to nuclear energy will result in additional development of alternative energy. Most of the funding comes from utilities, which will simply invest more money in coal if they are forced to give up nuclear power. 4. Renewable energy is important, but alone it cannot replace coal. The affirmative would force a reversion to coal-based power. Richard Kerr argues in Nature magazine that, quote, fuel sources like corn or wood tend to be bulky. Their energy content is diffuse. Planting energy crops and building solar or wind farms is a land-hungry process, and the energy they deliver is often intermittent and hard to store. Replacing even half the coal, oil, and gas consumed today would require 6 terawatts of renewable energy, estimates the International Institute for Applied Systems and Analysis. In contrast, renewables today produce just 0.5 terawatts. Even if analysts subtract the energy needed to extract, transport, and process coal, it still yields 50 times more energy than ethanol from corn and 10 times more than ethanol from sugarcane. Nuclear power plants operate 75 to 90% of the time. In contrast, wind turbines typically stand idle 65 to 80% of the time, and the sun is guaranteed to be unavailable half the time, not counting the passing cloud. 5. The Center for Nuclear Engineering goes on to argue that, quote, it seems ever more likely that nuclear development will be required to ensure a low-carbon energy future that makes maximally efficient use of nuclear plants and resources. Energy and research policy decisions made now will determine whether we have the capacity to design and develop innovative new systems that contribute to sustainable, flexible nuclear energy generation. Although we are developing other energy-generating systems and it is possible that nuclear development will not be required, it would be unwise at this stage to assume that nuclear energy will not be needed. If we are to generate the option for policymakers in the energy industries, we must act now. End quote. 6. This is the biggest impact in the debate. First is probability. Global warming is the most well-documented hypothesis in the life sciences since the theory of evolution. Every additional unit of greenhouse gas emissions contributes to global warming. Nuclear plants trade off with dirty coal and are guaranteed to mitigate global warming. Second is magnitude. Containment systems at Fukushima prevented the meltdown from endangering the larger population. Even in the worst-case scenario, a small number of workers is only briefly endangered. Global warming will displace millions of people who live along the water's edge, especially in developing countries, and will devastate agriculture all over the world. A surge of environmental refugees concomitant with extended economic decline is a recipe for a surge of regional wars that could kill hundreds of thousands of people. It could escalate to Poland's superpowers. Thank you.